Hey groupers, Pastor Marshall. Obviously we're doing some heavy lifting for the next few weeks as we talk about separation of church and hate. Well, today we're going to talk about civility. Let's get everyone talking and let's talk about how have you handled the opposing side incorrectly? How have you handled the opposing side incorrectly? Let's start in the shallow end of the pool with sports. How have you handled the opposing side incorrectly at church or with religion? How have you handled the opposing side incorrectly on social media? And how have you handled the opposing side incorrectly in your family? Of course, that might have to do with social media or sports or church. First thing that James says, we're looking at James 1, 19, 20, and 21. The first thing that James says is that we are supposed to be quick to listen. And so just as a group, talk a little bit about what are some of the great challenges for being quick to listen. And I want you to share for you personally, for your personality, for how does this question, how does this command affect you personally? What are the greatest challenges for you to be quick to listen? And are there certain places or certain people that you often handle this badly with? Are there certain situations, certain places, certain people that you really are not a good listener, that it kind of brings out your worst? Talk about that, share that, be transparent with your group about that. Who is someone that you know that is a good model? Who is someone in your family, maybe in your past, that was a good model to you, that helped you to at least see and experience good listening? And then think about this. Are there ever times that we should not be quick to listen? Are there times, and if there are, what are they? Are there times, situations, people that we should not be quick to listen? Well, James says to be quick to listen, and then he says to be slow to speak. I wonder if any of you remember what I said in my message, that what does it literally mean to be slow to speak? And for you personally, what are your hot button issues that cause you to pop off? For you personally, what are your hot button issues that cause you to be quick on the draw with your words? That you're not really good at being slow to speak when certain subjects come up. And then I wonder this, is there anyone in your workplace or in your family that is the nemesis to your slow to speakness? Is there any specific person in your workplace or any specific person in your family that you are just always ready to give your opinions to? And then again, finally, on the subject of being slow to speak, what do you think that social media would look like if we were required to wait 24 hours after reading a post before we could respond? What do you think that social media, how would social media change for you? How would social media change if people had to wait 24 hours before they could respond to something? And what if only the poster, the person that put the post, what if they were the only ones that could see other people's responses? How would that change social media? Would it be as fun? Well, James says that we're to be slow to speak. He says that we're to be quick to listen. And then he says that we are to be slow to become angry. Think about, again, we're just talking about you. How do you tend to express your anger? How do you generally express your anger? Do you blow up or do you clam up? Which is kind of your default anger? Do you blow up or do you bottle it up? And then I want you to turn to Ephesians 4:26, and Paul talks about anger in Ephesians 4:26, and I would just wonder, what does he add to the conversation? What does Paul add to the conversation in Ephesians 4:26? You might read a couple of verses around it too. What is the difference then between human anger and righteous anger? We talk about these as we kind of bring James and Ephesians together. What is the difference? How would we define human anger and how would we define righteous anger differently? And according to verse 20, what are the divine results of human anger? What happens in the heavenlies, what is God's response to human anger? And then, besides Jesus in the marketplace, I wonder if you have seen or read about righteous anger that you could share in your group as other examples of righteous anger besides Jesus in the marketplace. And then we round out the passage with verse 21. In verse 21, James tells us to rid ourselves of moral filth, which you might remember. That means things that we do that dishonor others. And he tells us that we're to rid ourselves of evil, which is specifically malice, bad actions towards others. James tells us to rid ourselves of moral filth and of evil. And so again, let's just think about our social media feeds. What would your social media responses look like if they didn't have malice and if they didn't have moral filth? If they didn't dishonor, what would your social media responses look like if they didn't dishonor other people and if they weren't malcontent towards other people? And what would our 24-hour news cycles look like if they didn't have these two aspects, this moral filth and this evil, this malice towards other, this dishonoring and malice? What would our 24-hour news cycles look like if they were minus those things? Well, finally, let's just not forget our application. This is a difficult time, and these are difficult studies. And so we want to add God's Word to our lives to help us with these difficult times. So I challenged you to memorize James chapter 1, verses 19 and 20. So how are you doing on that? Reading it every day over and over and over again is the best way to memorize. And so then the next time you read it, you're kind of starting to read it and fill in the words yourself. And the more and more you read it, the less words that you have to look at the page for. So how are you doing with your memorization of James 1, 19 and 20? And then not only did I say to memorize it, but rehearse it. Begin to practice this quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. How are you rehearsing that with your spouse, with your children, with your co-workers, with church folks? Well, I hope that you will continue to tune in, and we will next week talk about the next subject in church and hate. God bless. Bye-bye.